I made the mistake the moment I took that job. Hey there, my name is Ronan Vale, a pathfinder and hunter scraping by leading small groups through the treacherous passes of the Greyspine borderlands. I don't swear fealty to any army or lord, and I've got no interest in the grudges between humans and orc clans. My rules are simple: get paid, show the way, survive, and move on. No heroics, no entanglements. That's how I've stayed alive this long. But early in the hail season, a crew of miners from Dunmarch hired me to guide them to the slopes of Blackmaw. They claimed an old silver vein lay abandoned there since the wars. It was supposed to be a 2-day trek. I didn't know the cave they aimed for doubled as a secret orc smuggling route, or that one of the miners carried greed bigger than his guts. We reached the cave mouth near midday. A fine sleet lashed the cliffs and wind howled through the crags like a broken flute. The miners' 5 rough men with picks and lanterns grumbled about the weather, but their eyes gleamed when we descended the first rocky slope. I led, testing each step on the slick stone. The cave yawned wide at first, its walls veined with quartz that caught our light like frozen stars. But deeper in the air grew thick and cold, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic blood. That's when the shouts echoed from ahead. Not the cries of lost explorers. These were the raw, panicked yells of men who'd just seen violence. I froze, hand on my hunting axe. The miners behind me shoved forward, cursing. Then a shape burst from the shadows. An orc girl. She wasn't in full war gear, just ragged leather hunting garb torn at the shoulder, her left arm wrapped in old bandages. Her skin was dark like wet slate, and her black hair was tied high for movement. Golden eyes blazed in the dim light, fierce as a cornered predator's. In her hand, a short dagger dripped blood. Behind her, 2 of my miners staggered out, one clutching a slashed arm, the other swearing through gritted teeth as blood soaked his sleeve. What the hell? I started, but chaos erupted. The girl orc lunged at the nearest miner, her blade flashing. He swung his pick, wildly missing. The others drew knives, shouting accusations. Filthy greenskin thief! She's guarding the vein. I should have backed away. This wasn't my fight. But something held me. She wasn't charging blindly. Her movements were defensive, calculated, like someone protecting a path rather than ambushing for sport. And those eyes, there was pain in them, not just rage. Before I could decide, a low boom thundered from deeper in the cave. It was the groan of stone fracturing, a massive section of the ceiling giving way. Maybe the miners had wedged their picks wrong in their haste, or one had deliberately blasted a wall for a shortcut. Fools. The ground bucked under my feet. Run, I bellowed, spinning toward the entrance, but it was too late. A cascade of rock plummeted from above the cave's maw, collapsing like a beast's jaws snapping shut. Dust and gravel whipped into my face. I dove sideways, instinct screaming. The orc girl was right there, frozen for a split second. Without thinking, I tackled her, slamming us both to the cold floor as boulders thundered down. The impact jarred my bones. Pain lanced through my left shoulder where a shard of rock glanced off me. The world roared, a deafening grind of stone on stone. I covered my head, feeling the orc beneath me thrash once before going still under the assault of debris. When the noise faded to echoes, darkness swallowed us. Thick dust choked the air, and I coughed up grit-tasting blood. My lantern had shattered nearby, but a faint glow remained from its spilled oil flickering weakly. I pushed up, wincing at the fire in my shoulder. The orc shoved me off hard, her elbow digging into my chest. She rolled away, dagger already in hand, coughing as she scrambled to her feet. We both turned to the entrance, or what was left of it. Tons of rubble sealed it shut. No light seeped through, no way out that way. The remaining miners buried or fled, I couldn't tell. Screams had cut off mid-collapse. If any survived, they'd assume we were dead and wouldn't dig for strangers, especially not with an orc involved. She whirled on me, eyes flashing in the dim firelight. Your men did this. I didn't, I rasped, grabbing my axe from the debris. My forehead stung. A gash there wept blood down my face. I'm just the guide. I didn't know they planned to. Liar. She spat, her voice rough but steady, laced with an accent that rolled like mountain thunder. Humans always come for our paths, our veins. You led them here. I held my ground axe ready but not raised. She was hurt worse than me. Fresh blood seeped from her bandaged arm, and she favored her right leg. But she moved like a coiled spring ready to strike. From deeper in the cave, A low rumble echoed not settling stone, something alive, guttural, and wet. We weren't alone in here. Her gaze flicked toward the sound, then back to me. The dagger trembled slightly in her grip, not from fear I realized, but exhaustion. She could kill me now or I her, but what then? Die alone in the dark. The rumble grew closer. I lowered my axe a fraction. We fight now. Neither of us gets out. She snarled, tusks glinting. But she didn't lunge. Instead, she straightened, wiping blood from her lip. "Maela," she said like it cost her something. I blinked. Names weren't freely given in these lands, especially across lines. "Ronan," I replied. The rumble became a growl shadow shifting in the depths. Maela's eyes narrowed. "Move," she hissed, not at me, but toward the darkness. We backed away together, enemies by blood, but trapped by stone. The cave's belly held us both, and whatever lurked within wasn't picky about sides. Survival first, settle scores later, if we lived that long. The faint glow from the spilled lantern oil danced on the walls, casting long shadows that made the cave feel even smaller. Dust still hung thick in the air, settling on my skin like a gritty shroud. I wiped blood from my eyes. The gash on my forehead throbbed with every heartbeat and scanned the rubble. Massive boulders, some as big as a man, piled chaotically where the entrance had been. No cracks of daylight pierced through. We were sealed and buried alive under the mountain. Maela stood a few paces away, her dagger still gripped tight, her golden eyes locked on me with unfiltered hatred. Blood trickled from her bandaged arm, fresh and dark, against the old wrappings, and she shifted her weight off her right leg, favoring it subtly. She was shorter than most orcs I'd heard tales of, maybe my height 5'10", but built solid like the cliffs themselves. Her presence filled the space, a coiled energy that screamed danger. "Your men caused this," she growled again, her voice low and rough-edged with that orcish accent that turned words into weapons. "They invaded our paths." I kept my axe raised but loose, ready if she lunged. My left shoulder screamed in protest. Something had torn or bruised deep inside from the impact. "I'm not with them like that. I'm just the guide. They hired me to show the way to the vein. I didn't know they planned to start a fight." She sneered, her small tusks catching the light. "Humans always claim ignorance after the blood spills. You led them here. That makes you part of it." I bit back a retort. She wasn't wrong entirely. I'd smelled trouble in that crew, their eager eyes, the extra picks hidden under cloaks, but gold had blinded me. Now here I was, trapped with an orc, who had every reason to slit my throat. The miners outside. If any survived the collapse, they'd be long gone, writing us off as casualties. No one digs for a hired pathfinder and an enemy orc. From the depths of the cave, that rumble echoed again, closer now, like a beast stirring in its lair. Maela's ears twitched, her gaze flicking toward the darkness before snapping back to me. I lowered my axe a fraction. "Look, we can kill each other right now if that's what you want. But that thing back there, it won't care who's human or orc. It'll eat us both." The rumble grew into a growl, vibrating through the stone floor. Maela's eyes narrowed. "We can't dig out the entrance, too much rock. But I know these caves, there's old air shafts deeper in. Might lead to another way out." "You know this place?" I asked, surprised. She didn't strike me as a miner. She nodded curtly. "I scout these paths for my clan, Ashen Ridge. Your Lord Varnek's been probing our routes, sending spies like those miners. They ambushed me inside." Varnek. The name hit like a gut punch. He ruled Dunmarch and half these mountains, a greedy bastard who'd sell his own kin for a vein of ore. If his men were involved, this wasn't just bad luck. It was a setup. Those miners weren't after silver. They were after her, or whatever secrets she carried. "I didn't know," I muttered, but it sounded weak even to me. She scoffed. "Save your lies. We move now, or that crawler finds us first." Crawler. So that's what the rumble was. One of those cave beasts, slimy things with too many legs and jaws like traps. Great. I salvaged what I could from the debris, my pack half crushed, but with some rations, a water skin, and the lantern's remnants. I relit it carefully, the flame sputtering to life on a wick of torn cloth. Maela watched, her posture rigid. As we started deeper, I noticed her limp worsening. Each step on that right leg made her jaw clench. We hadn't gone far when she stumbled, catching herself on the wall with a hiss. Blood seeped faster from her arm, now the bandage soaked through. "You're hurt bad," I said, stopping. She glared. "It's nothing. Nothing that'll kill you slow. Let me see." "Why?" "So you can finish what your friend started." I set the lantern down and raised my hands. "If I wanted you dead, I'd have let the rocks do it. We're stuck together, might as well not bleed out before we find a way out." She hesitated, eyes searching my face for deceit. Finally, she lowered the dagger and sat on a low ledge, rolling up her sleeve. The wound was ugly, a deep slash across her bicep, not from rock, but of blade edges ragged and inflamed. It had reopened in the collapse, and infection was setting in. "Looks like sword work," I said, kneeling to inspect it. Her skin was warm, almost feverish, tougher than human hide, but not impenetrable. The scent of sweat and blood mixed with something earthy like moss after rain. "You're miners," she confirmed, wincing as I probed the edges. "One got lucky before I fought back." I pulled clean cloth from my pack spares for bandages and my water skin. "This'll sting." I poured water over the gash, washing away grit. She didn't flinch, but her breath hitched. I tore the cloth into strips, binding it tight, but not too tight. Her arm was solid muscle under my fingers, veins standing out from the strain. Touching her felt strange. Not repulsive like the old tales said about orcs, but real vital. As I tied the last knot, she spoke quietly. "Why help humans don't aid orcs?" I sat back, wiping my hands. "Maybe I'm tired of the killing. I left a man behind once in the wars. Didn't mean to, but it happened. He died because I chose to run. Not doing that again." She studied me, her golden eyes reflecting the lantern's glow. For the first time, the hatred softened just a crack. "Varnick wants our maps, the hidden routes through these mountains. I carry them here." She tapped her temple. "If he gets them, he'll choke our clan, steal the ore, water the paths to the north." So she wasn't just a scout. She was a living key to the borderlands. No wonder Varnick hunted her. "Then we get you out," I said, standing. "Air shafts, you said." Myla nodded, sheathing her dagger at last. She didn't thank me, not with words. But as we moved deeper, she didn't watch me like prey anymore. The growl echoed again, closer. Whatever lurked, it smelled blood. We weren't allies yet. But in this tomb of stone, we weren't quite enemies either. Survival demanded that much. The cave narrowed like the throat of some ancient beast, the walls pressing in until I had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Every step echoed with the drip of water from unseen cracks above, and the air grew heavier, laced with the musty rot of things long buried. My lantern's flame flickered low, casting erratic shadows that played tricks on my eyes, making stones look like lurking shapes ready to pounce. I'd never liked tight spaces. They clawed at my mind, stirring up memories of that war trench where I'd been pinned once, waiting for dawn or death. But complaining wouldn't help. Myla led now, her limp more pronounced in the confined path, but she didn't slow. She knew these depths better than I did, her orc senses picking up drafts and scents I couldn't. We'd been moving for what felt like hours, maybe it was, with no sun to mark time. My shoulder burned like fire, each twist sending jolts down my arm, but I gritted through it. Myla's breathing came rougher too. The cold and her wounds were taking their toll. The growl we'd heard earlier had faded, but I felt it in my bones that whatever owned this cave wasn't far. The tunnel opened suddenly into a wider chamber, the ceiling arching high enough to stand straight. But relief died quick. An underground stream cut across our path, black water rushing swift and deep, foaming against jagged rocks. It wasn't wide, maybe 10 paces across, but the current looked vicious, and the chill radiating from it hit like a slap. Myla halted at the edge, her golden eyes scanning the flow. "Bad," she muttered. "Can we ford it?" I asked, holding the lantern higher. Mist rose from the surface, and when I knelt to test the water, bit my fingers like needles. Freezing mountain melt, probably fed from snow higher up. "We can swim," she said, but her tone held doubt. "But beyond is a steep climb. The cold will seize your limbs. Hard to grip when you're numb." I glanced back. The way we'd come was no option with the collapse and that lurking growl. Forward it was. "No other paths," she shook her head. "This is the main vein. Side tunnels might loop back or dead end. We cross." We stripped off excess gear. My pack lightened, her bandages checked. She tied her dagger secure, and I did the same with my axe. The water looked deeper in the middle, swirling eddies hinting at hidden pulls. Maella went first, wading in up to her thighs before diving forward. I followed the cold slamming into me like a hammer. It stole my breath, constricting my chest as I stroked across. The current tugged hard, trying to drag me downstream, but I kicked fiercely eyes on Maella ahead. Halfway, a snarl ripped through the chamber, loud, wet, and close. I twisted in the water, glimpsing movement on the far bank. 2 pairs of pale green eyes gleamed in the lantern light I'd left propped on a rock. Cavern crawlers, slimy, elongated horrors with segmented bodies, 4 stubby legs and maws full of hooked teeth. I'd heard miners' tales they hunted by scent, ambushing anything wounded in the dark. Our blood must have drawn them. "Maella!" I shouted, water filling my mouth. One crawler slithered down the bank, its body undulating like a worm on legs. She reached the opposite shore first, hauling herself up, dagger out. "Swim!" I surged forward, but the cold was already sinking in, numbing my fingers. The first crawler plunged into the stream, paddling with unnatural speed. It snapped at my boot teeth, grazing leather. I kicked back, connecting with its snout, but it barely slowed. Maella leaned over the edge, extending her arm. "Grab!" Our hands met, slick and freezing, and she yanked me up just as the beast lunged again. I scrambled onto the rock axe in hand and swung wildly. The blade bit into its shoulder, black ichor spraying. It screeched, thrashing, but I brought the axe down again, severing its head. The body twitched and went still. The second crawler was smarter. It circled the bank, waiting. Maella panted, her lips blue-tinged. "We can't stay. The climb's ahead." We grabbed our gear and pushed on, but the cold clung like chains. My clothes sodden, every step heavier. The tunnel sloped upward, now rough and steep, forcing us to claw at handholds. Maella slipped once, her wounded leg buckling, and I caught her elbow, steadying her. She didn't pull away immediately. Progress, maybe. The crawler followed its claws, scraping stone. It was patient, knowing the cold would weaken us. We reached a narrower ledge, the path hugging a drop into blackness. Maella went first, testing grips. Halfway, the beast charged from below, leaping onto the wall with adhesive pads on its feet. It snapped at her ankle. "Behind!" I yelled. She twisted, dagger flashing, and stabbed its eye. The crawler howled, recoiling, but its tail whipped around, knocking her off balance. She teetered, grabbing a root, then it snapped. I lunged without thinking, axe dropping as I dove forward. My hand clamped around her wrist just as she fell, my body slamming against the ledge. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but I held. The crawler recovered, scrambling up. Maella swung her free leg, kicking its face, but it kept coming. "Pull!" she gasped. I heaved with everything left, veins bulging, muscles screaming. She scrambled up, rolling over me as the beast reached the top. I snatched a loose bone shard from the ground, some old prey's remains, and drove it into the crawler's throat as it pounced. It gurgled, collapsing atop me, its weight crushing. Maella shoved it off, her dagger finishing the job with a twist. We lay there, gasping, the corpse's stench filling the air. Blood ours, and it's mixed on the stone. The cold hit harder now, seeping into bones. My teeth chattered uncontrollably. Maella's too, her green skin paling. "We need fire," I managed. She nodded weakly. We dragged ourselves to a small alcove sheltered from drafts. I rummaged my pack for my flint box, wrapped in oiled leather miraculously dry. Gathering scraps, dry moss from cracks, wood splinters from my axe handle, torn cloth from my shirt. My fingers fumbled numb. Strike after strike, failed sparks dying in the damp. "Keep trying," Maella urged, her voice slurring from the chill. On the 10th attempt, a spark caught. I blew gently, coaxing it to flame. It was pathetic, small sputtering, but heat bloomed. We huddled close, stripping wet outer layers to dry by the fire. The alcove was tight, forcing proximity. Maella shivered violently, arms wrapped around herself. "If we sleep like this, won't wake," I said through chattering teeth. Her eyes met mine, wary but resigned. What then? Share heat. The words hung heavy. It wasn't about desire. It was survival. But suggesting it to an orc, my supposed enemy madness. She tensed, pride flashing. "You think I'd... Not that I cut in. Just body warmth. No other way." Silence stretched. She glanced at her trembling hands, lips blue. Finally, she shifted closer without a word. I draped my oilskin cloak over us both, dry side in. She leaned against my chest, stiff at first like stone. Her back was solid warmer than expected despite the chill. I wrapped an arm around her waist, tentatively feeling her tense, then relax, fraction by fraction. The cold was honest, it broke barriers words couldn't. As warmth spread slowly, her shivers eased. Mine too. In the quiet, broken only by the fire's crackle, she spoke. "You could have left me in the water." "Could have," I admitted. "But I didn't." "Why?" I stared at the flames. "Told you I left a man once. War Patrol ambushed. I ran, he didn't make it. Haunts me, won't repeat it." She was quiet. Then, "I'm not just a scout. I hold the maps every hidden path through Greyspine. Varnek wants them to claim the mountains starve our clans. That's why he hunts me. A living map. No wonder she fought like hell. Then we get you back to yours." She shifted her head, resting against my shoulder now. "You don't owe me." "No. But maybe I owe myself." We didn't speak more. Exhaustion pulled us under, wrapped in shared heat. Not trust yet, but something. In that darkness, she wasn't just an orc. She was Maela fighting for her people. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving alone. The embers of our fire had died to a faint red glow, barely enough to ward off the chill that seeped back into the alcove. I stirred first, my body aching like it had been hammered on an anvil. My arm was still draped around Maela's waist, her back pressed against my chest, a necessity born of survival. But in the quiet aftermath, it felt intimate. Too intimate for enemies. She woke with a start, her muscles tensing under my touch. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she shifted away, pulling the oilskin cloak with her, her golden eyes, avoiding mine. "We survived," she said, flatly standing and brushing off the grit. Her voice was steadier now, the blue tint gone from her lips, but she winced as she put weight on her right leg. "Yeah," I muttered, rubbing my sore shoulder. The wound there pulsed hot, but the cold had numbed the worst of it overnight. We didn't speak of the closeness, no need to complicate things further. Survival first. We packed what little we had, my dwindling rations, her dagger, my axe. The cave's air felt heavier now, pressing down like the weight of the mountain above. Maela scanned the walls, her fingers tracing cracks. "There," she pointed to a narrow fissure high up where a faint draft whispered through. An air shaft, one of the mountain's breaths. It might lead out. I nodded, hoisting the lantern. The flame was low on oil. We'd have to move fast. The fissure was tight, barely a slit in the stone. I wedged my axe into the edges, chipping away loose rock while Maela used her dagger to pry. Sweat beaded on my brow despite the cold. Each strike jarred my injuries, but we widened it enough for one person to squeeze through sideways. "You first," I said. "You know the drafts." She hesitated, a flicker of something trust in her eyes. Then she nodded and slipped in her shoulders, scraping stone. I followed the lantern tied to my belt, casting jittery light ahead. The shaft sloped upward at a brutal angle, more a chimney than a tunnel. We climbed on elbows and knees, the rock biting into skin. My breath came in ragged bursts. The space was suffocating walls so close I could feel them brushing my back and chest simultaneously. Maela paused ahead, her boots slipping on loose gravel. "Steady," she whispered back. I reached up, bracing her foot with my hand until she found purchase. She didn't thank me, but she didn't shake me off either. Further on, the shaft narrowed to a crawl, my shoulders wedged tight, panic clawing at my throat. "Push through," Maela urged from ahead. I gritted my teeth, exhaling to shrink my chest, and shoved forward inch by inch. A root snagged my sleeve. I yanked free, but it cost me balance. My knee slipped, and for a terrifying second I slid backward. Maela's hand shot back, grabbing my wrist in a vice grip. "Hold!" she grunted, pulling with orc strength. I scrambled up, heart pounding. "Thanks," I gasped. "Don't fall," she replied, but there was no bite in it. In that moment, trapped in Stone's embrace, I realized we weren't just surviving. Side by side, we depended on each other utterly. One slip and we'd both tumble into the abyss. The shaft widened after what felt like an eternity, the air growing fresher, laced with the scent of rain and pine. Gray light filtered in ahead. Maela quickened and we emerged onto a narrow ledge on the mountain's far side. I blinked against the dim daylight, the world a blur of mist-shrouded valleys below. We were on the eastern flank of Black Maw, overlooking a fog-draped lowland not back toward Dunmarch, but deeper into border territory. I sucked in fresh air relief flooding me, but it shattered when I spotted smoke curling from a camp at the hill's base. Tents, horses, a rough sentry post, Varnek's men, at least 8 by the figures moving around the fire. "They're waiting," Myla hissed, crouching low. They knew about the shafts, blocking the exits. Rage boiled in my gut. This wasn't coincidence. The miners had been Varnek's pawns, luring her and me into a trap. If they caught her, those maps in her head would hand him the mountains. "We can't fight that many," I said. Myela's eyes scanned the terrain. "There's an old hunting trail to the left, ledges and roots down the cliff. Narrow slick, but it cuts straight to Windscar, our clan's outpost." I eyed the trail, a series of precarious outcrops and exposed roots clinging to the sheer face. One wrong step meant a long fall. "Lead on." We descended carefully, the mist our ally cloaking our movements. Myla went first, testing holds, her limp making her cautious. I followed, axe slung over my back. The rock was wet, fingers slipping on mossy grips. Wind tugged at us, threatening to peel us off. Halfway down, Myela's foot dislodged a pebble. It clattered below, echoing. A shout rose from the camp. They'd heard or seen through the thinning fog. "Move," I urged. Arrows whistled up, one embedding in the cliff inches from my hand. Myla flung her dagger downward. A cry followed hit. I unslung my crossbow, loaded a bolt mid-climb, and fired blind into the mist. A grunt of pain rewarded me. They were scrambling up now, boots scraping. We hit a loose gravel slide near the bottom, half-running, half-tumbling down. Rocks pelted us, but we reached the tree-lined pines offering scant cover. Arrows thunked into trunks as we sprinted through the sparse forest, breath-burning wounds reopening. Windscar loomed ahead, a cluster of low stone huts fortified with wooden spikes and a small watchtower. "Almost," Myela gasped. An arrow grazed my calf fire, lancing up my leg. I stumbled, but she grabbed my arm, hauling me forward. "Gate!" she bellowed in her clan's tongue. The wooden barrier creaked open just as our pursuers burst from the trees. We dove through, collapsing inside, as orc archers on the tower loosed shafts, driving the attackers back. The gate slammed shut. Safe for now. But as I lay there, panting, blood pooling from my leg, I knew Varnek's men wouldn't stop, and neither would we. Windscar wasn't much to look at, a huddle of squat stone huts hunkered under a overhanging cliff, ringed by sharpened wooden stakes, and a single watchtower that leaned like it had seen too many storms. But after the cave's suffocating dark, it felt like salvation. We collapsed inside the gate, my leg burning from the arrow graze, Myla's wounds seeping fresh blood. Orc archers on the tower loosed a volley, forcing Varnek's men to scatter back into the mist-shrouded trees. The gate thudded shut behind us, barred with iron. A burly orc woman strode forward, her gray-streaked hair braided with bone beads, a scarred axe slung over her shoulder. She eyed Myela with relief, then me with suspicion. "Myla, we thought you lost to the depths." "Close enough," Myla replied, pushing to her feet despite the pain. She gripped the woman's arm in a clan greeting. "Rasha, the paths are compromised. Varnek's spies hit the main vein miners disguised. They triggered the collapse." Rasha's gaze sharpened, flicking to me. "And this human—" "He pulled me from the rubble," Myla said firmly. "Saved my hide more than once in there." I stood silent, feeling the weight of a dozen orc eyes on me, warriors, scouts, a few elders. They weren't hostile outright, but trust was a rare coin in these borderlands. Rasha grunted, waving for a healer. "Patch them, then talk." They led us to a central hut, its walls etched with clan runes. A young orc tended our wounds, fresh bandages for Myela's arm and leg, a poultice for my shoulder and calf that stung like fire but numbed the ache. As Myela recounted everything, the ambush, the cave-in, our desperate crawl through the shafts, Rasha listened, her face hardening. Varnek's greed wasn't news, but Myela's maps made her a prize. Losing her meant losing the mountains. "You're staying?" Rasha asked her. Myela nodded. "Send word to Ashen Ridge at dawn. We'll need warriors to seal the paths before he pushes deeper." "And him," Rasha jerked a thumb at me. Maella met my eyes briefly. He's no spy. Without him, I'd be crawler bait. Rasha didn't press, but her look said she wasn't convinced. They gave me a corner in a storage hut to rest sacks of grain, for a bed, a thin blanket. I should have collapsed into sleep, but my mind raced. The old life guiding fools for coin drifting alone felt hollow now. Varnick's trap had pulled me in, but Maella, she'd changed the game. I wasn't just surviving anymore. Shouts shattered the quiet before dusk. To the walls, I grabbed my axe and crossbow, limping out. Varnick's men, 8 or 9, now reinforced, charged from the tree-lined shields, up arrows arcing overhead. Rasha bellowed orders from the tower. Orcs manned the spikes, loosing bolts and spears. I climbed the low wall, loading my crossbow despite the fire in my shoulder. An arrow whistled past my ear. I fired back, catching a man in the thigh. He dropped screaming. Below, the attackers rammed the gate with a felled log, the wood groaning under impacts. Maella was there, spear in hand, moving like a shadow despite her limp. She hurled it, true piercing a shield and the arm behind. The man fell back, but another took his place. "They're testing us," she shouted over the din. A grapnel hooked the wall near me. I hacked the rope, but a face appeared over the edge, grim-scarred. He swung a sword. I dodged, axe biting into his hand. He tumbled back with a yell. The assault faltered when Rasha's archers picked off 2 more. Varnick's captain, a tall brute in chainmail, retreated, but not before bellowing, "Varnick offers gold for the mapkeeper, deliver the orc girl, and walk rich!" The words hung in the air as they vanished into the trees. Rasha spat. "Cowards! But they'll return with more." Night fell uneasy. Fires burned low in the huts. Guards doubled. I sat by a central brazier, sharpening my axe when Maella approached. She'd changed into clan leathers, clean-fitted, making her look every bit the guardian she'd claimed. Her hair was wounds rebound, but exhaustion lingered in her eyes. She sat across from me, silent at first. The fire crackled between us. "I came to settle debts," she said finally. I set the whetstone down. "No need, we're even." "Not gold or oaths," she continued, ignoring me. "Truth." I waited. "In the cave I saw you as a burden. When you spoke of sharing heat, I thought it a ploy. When you pulled me from the water from the cliff, I had to admit I was wrong about you." The words hit deeper than expected. "I was wrong too," I admitted. "Thought you were just a proud warrior, dangerous and nothing but trouble. And now, still dangerous," I said with a tired smile, "but not trouble. Not to me." She held my gaze, the fire reflecting in her golden eyes. "No more walls there, just clarity. Rasha sends riders at dawn to Ashen Ridge. I'll go with the warriors when they come. This fight's mine." I nodded. It made sense, but the thought of her vanishing into that war while I slunk back to Dunmarch, it twisted something in me. "You could leave me here. No one would stop you. You've done more than any human should." "I know." I leaned forward. "But if Varnick takes those paths, he'll crush everything, Dunmarch included. I know the western trails better than anyone. If your clan needs a guide to cut his supply lines, I can do it." Her brow furrowed. "You owe nothing. Maybe not to you, but to myself. Yeah, I don't want the best thing I've done to end in that damn cave." For the first time she smiled, small, genuine, softening the hard lines of her face. It changed everything about her, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She extended her hand across the fire, not a human shake, but open palm fingers steady. "From now on," she said, "you walk with me not because you're trapped, but because you choose." I looked at that hand, calloused, scarred, strong, real. I placed mine in hers, warm, solid, true. And in that grip I knew the cave's title wasn't just irony. I'd been trapped with an orc girl, never expecting we'd rely on each other to survive. But emerging from the dark, what kept me by her side wasn't mere necessity anymore. It was choice. And as we prepared for the war ahead, I wanted to walk further with her through whatever battles came.